各位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。目前為止喺本國持有學生簽證嘅人士咧，高達80萬人，相比起10年之前嘅簽證人數就更加高出2.5倍。亦都有唔少嘅調查機構預測，今年底持有學生簽證嘅人咧，高達90萬人。不過，本國嘅房屋危機問題嚴峻，租金不斷攀升，房屋供應不足嘅問題咧，仍然冇辦法得到解決。喺今年嘅7月，執政聯邦自由黨政府改組咗內閣，出任房屋部長嘅菲沙咧更加提到需要解決問題，其中一個選項係限制海外學生前嚟加拿大，隨即就引起外界揣測。
We can't blame immigrants for our problems. We blame Justin Trudeau. The immigrants are just following his policies, right? They're not breaking any rules. They're just coming and doing what he's told them to do.
We worry about it. We started off as soon as the comment was made, we were very worried about it. Keeping a pulse on things, we haven't quite noticed to a large degree that the general public took that comment and really ran with it.
點解佢哋要針對海外嘅學生呢？咁樣呢個呢，就對我嚟講呢，亦都係大嘅問題。佢今日呢，就係針對海外嘅學生啦，咁聽日呢，佢會唔會針對啲移民呢？
國際留學生究竟係咪導致房屋問題加劇嘅因素呢？喺2023年喺本國持有學生簽證嘅人數大約有807750人，比舊年多出大約25萬人。由2000年到2021年，喺20年間獲簽發學生簽證嘅人更加增加咗4倍。國際留學生人數倍增係源於聯邦政府舊年嘅移民政策，期望吸引更多人才去填補勞工短缺。不過今年7月執政嘅聯邦自由黨政府改組內閣，前移民部長菲沙調任房屋部長，上任之後冇幾耐，佢指出本國嘅房屋問題非常嚴重，要解決。其中一個可能嘅方法係限制國際學生人數。代表多個學生組織發聲嘅大專院校學生聯盟認為，聯邦政府喺冇任何實質理據嘅情況底下立論。
My very, very first reaction was, oh no. And the reason I say that is because I don't think he meant any harm at all in making that statement. But sometimes there are unintended consequences. So an unintended consequences to bringing up that population without really any stats to kind of back that up and blame an overarching housing and poverty crisis that we're in as a country and also globally. This isn't just a Canada problem. Many, many places are going through this cost of living, standards and crises that is happening. We see all over the world. What we focus on obviously is Canada and specifically Ontario. So for the minister to say that, we felt that it would erroneously give people the chance to stigmatize this already at-risk population because they are already, as we know, historically, many times due to some misinformation, often immigrants or international students are kind of blamed for some of the things that plague different countries. We see it all the time with the US. We see it in Canada as well, perhaps not to the same degree or to the same veracity, but we see it. And comments like that make it seem like our housing crisis is due to an influx of international students just didn't make sense to us.
一時又話國際學生嚟到本國之後，佢哋嘅居住環境都唔係比其他人較好，甚至居住情況比一般人更加惡劣。
And I don't think that's exactly what the minister meant either. Perhaps it was a tongue-in-cheek comment. Perhaps it was maybe this is one of, hundreds of other options and steps that we're considering. But to think that, I don't think any rational person at this moment thinks that putting a cap on international student is going to solve our housing crisis. I don't think anyone believes that. I read stories daily. I just saw a story on the CBC where a student is paying $550 a month to share a primary bedroom in a basement with 2 other people. So imagine 1 bedroom in a basement has 3 different mattresses is what it looked like, just on the floor, very little space for them, and they're paying $550 a month. And, they still have to cover their transportation, their school, and they have to focus and they have to do well in their studies. How are you really supposed to achieve that?
不過有法律界人士就認為房屋部長菲沙嘅言論並唔係針對國際學生，佢認為喺疫情之後，國際學生同埋其他移民都大量湧入本國，令當局措手不及。
If we are talking about too much demand, we definitely need to address the question of the large number of permanent residents and non-permanent residents that the government is admitting to Canada, because that is definitely increasing demand. I don't think it's just the international students, but also other temporary workers and permanent residents. However, having said that, the international students are a very large component of the problem. Nobody's saying that they have caused the problem. They did not. But obviously, we are in a period of time in which there are approximately 800,000 foreign students in Canada, and according to the statistics, Canada is on pace to have 900,000 foreign students by the end of the year. That is obviously unsustainable, because if you think back to pre-pandemic times, there were a lot fewer foreign students, and the government has increased that steadily for a variety of reasons.
數字顯示，國際留學生平均每年為本國帶嚟超過220億嘅經濟收入。聯邦新民主黨國會議員關惠貞話，倘若限制國際學生人數，將會為本國經濟帶嚟衝擊，亦都扼殺咗嚟自唔同地方前嚟本國讀書嘅專才。
對我哋一定會有一個好大嘅影響㗎。咁樣因為啲學生嚟到咧，除咗讀書之外咧，佢哋都係做緊工嘅，有大部分嘅學生都係做緊工嘅。咁樣有好多商界，尤其是小商界嘅朋友咧，就係依靠緊啲學生嘅人手嘅。咁樣突然間佢哋失蹤晒冇晒，咁樣點樣處理咧？同埋好似因為佢哋嚟到加拿大咧，佢哋亦都為加拿大嘅經濟係有 contribution 㗎嘛。咁樣所以嗰啲 contribution 咪會全部失去晒咯。咁樣呢個亦都會有一個好大嘅打擊俾到加拿大嘅經濟咯。所以其實佢呢條數其實我都喺度諗緊，其實政府係咪真係有認真咁樣嚟睇過呢個問題？係咪因為佢哋而家有大嘅壓力，大家就話佢哋房屋嗰度係做得差，而房屋嗰度而家更緊急啦，佢咧就揾個 scapegoat 出嚟，就係指佢話係啲學生啊，因為佢哋咁多學生嚟，所以我哋唔夠房屋啊，係咪即係咁樣好容易嚟 scapegoat 咗啲人咯？今日就 scapegoat 緊啲學生啦，聽日咧就會 scapegoat 緊啲移民嘅朋友嚟到加拿大咯。
聯邦房屋部長設上限論一出之後，有唔同學者都開始撰寫文章討論有關議題，包括喺西門菲沙大學擔任助理教授嘅 Lilac Marum， 佢話自己班上有唔少國際學生都有討論呢一個問題，所以佢就同其他本國大專院校教授聯合撰寫文章探討有關議題。
Generally speaking, there are more cuts and less governmental and provincial funding for higher education. So the easiest way to make revenues are via international students with on average pay 3 to 5 times tuition than domestic students. So this became a really, very easy way for university to keep their revenues, right? And it also kind of like create this all blooming industry of some private colleges that are not even colleges, right? So I would say they're not even providing education, but also kind of like this collaboration, public-private collaboration that university kind of like collaborate with public institution and within arm length, but exploit students there. And also just, public universities that just became really reliable on those tuitions. And we saw this during the pandemic with many institutions, having loss of revenue because not having enough international students, right? So this is definitely a problem. It's a problem of funding, it's a problem of dependency, and it makes universities sometimes take shortcuts, right? So it's totally fine to have international students, but those need to be treated as students. They need to be provided with support and services and housing and good education.
喺去年，移民部嘅數字顯示，國際學生為本國帶嚟大約223億元嘅收入。咁如果聯邦政府真係喺學生簽證設上限，咁會為本國嘅經濟帶嚟啲乜嘢影響？同樣又能否解決到房屋嘅問題呢？我哋下一節翻嚟再睇。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。要真正解決本國日積月累嘅房屋等各種問題啊，係咪真係需要對學生簽證人數設上限呢？又會唔會有其他更好嘅選擇呢？
喺9月，聯邦保守黨黨領 Pierre Poilievre 博勵治喺卑詩省大溫地區同傳媒舉行圓桌會議期間話，執政自由黨政府上台以嚟，將各項民生問題加劇，總理杜魯多只係將責任推卸俾其他人。
We can't blame immigrants for our problems. We blame Justin Trudeau. The immigrants are just following his policies, right? They're not breaking any rules. They're just coming and doing what he's told them to do. He's the one that hasn't allowed housing to get built. He's giving cities money to block housing construction while he brings in 1 million people a year. It doesn't add up. We built fewer homes last year than we built in 1972. Think about that. Last year, we built 219,000 homes. In 1972, we built 232,000 homes. In 1972, our population was 22 million. Last year, it was 39 million. So we doubled the population, and we're building fewer homes. The math doesn't add up. And so he's had 8 years to get home building going, and he hasn't done it. And now people are homeless. Our refugees living in the streets and under bridges. It's incredible.
博勵治話：要解決問題，應該採取由根本做起嘅方法。
I'll use a bottom-up approach. When I'm Prime Minister, we're going to go back to a common sense system that we had before Trudeau, where the number of international students was based on the availability of housing, spaces in our colleges and universities, and jobs for those who wanted to work. So we will have, if you want to be an international student when I'm a Prime Minister, you have to demonstrate that you have a place to live, that you have, if you do not have your own bank, you do not have your own savings, you have to demonstrate that you have already locked up a job to pay your bills, and we'll also make sure that there's enough healthcare capacity, because even though they're young, they still need healthcare when things go wrong. So that's how we'll do it. It will be a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach.
對於新任嘅聯邦房屋部長對國際學生設上限嘅言論，聯邦新民主黨國會議員關偉貞話：呢一番針對國際學生嘅言論非常唔公平。現時本國除咗房屋問題，亦都正經歷勞工短缺問題，需要大量人才前嚟本國。
點解佢哋要針對海外嘅學生呢？咁樣呢個咧就對我嚟講咧，亦都係大嘅問題。佢今日咧就係針對海外嘅學生啦，咁聽日咧佢會唔會針對啲移民咧？咁樣會唔會針對即係好似我哋移民嚟到加拿大咁，就冇話係我哋，因為我哋有移民人嚟到加拿大，所以咧我哋房屋計劃有呢個咁大嘅問題咧，佢會唔會下一步會咁樣去咧？我相信而家去緊嗰條路咧，啲人咧就會逐漸咁樣去指住係外地嚟到加拿大嗰啲人咧，就係因為佢哋嚟咗加拿大就係有呢個問題。但係大家亦都要知道，其實政府咧佢哋嘅計劃係乜嘢，亦都係政府佢哋自己講噶，係話我哋需要呢啲海外嘅學生啦，同埋外地嚟到加拿大人嚟支持我哋嘅經濟。 點解我哋有呢個需要咧？就係因為我哋喺加拿大就啲人就越嚟越年老啦嘛，就要退休啦嘛，咁我哋咪有呢個 labour shortage 咯，同埋啲人亦都即係冇似好似當年咁樣，佢哋個家庭係細嘅，冇咁多個細蚊仔，咁所以咧我哋亦都要依靠翻呢一個移民嘅方向嚟支持翻加拿大嘅經濟同埋嗰個呢一個employment 嘅工作同埋嗰個 labour skill shortage 嗰個需要咯。
根據統計局數據顯示，截至喺2023年3月嘅勞工短缺職位，雖然對比2022年大約100萬個職位有下降趨勢，不過仍然大約超過80萬個職位空缺。喺舊年，聯邦政府一度允許國際留學生能夠工作超過20個鐘，去填補勞工短缺問題。以前擔任過移民部長嘅房屋部長提出設留學生上限嘅建議，會唔會被認為係利用緊留學生呢？
講到點解我哋想啲留學生嚟，就係因為咧佢哋想係爭取，等到加拿大爭取到the best and the brightest 可以所謂，因為好多啲留學生嚟到加拿大咧，佢哋下一步咧就係會邀請長期咁樣逗留喺加拿大噶啦嘛，咁樣咧所以咧我哋就想吸引晒最好嗰啲學生嗰啲年青人嚟到加拿大咯，咁樣吸引咗佢嚟到之後咧，就嚟為加拿大經濟幫我哋加拿大嘅經濟啦。咁樣佢哋嚟到之後，但係而家出咗呢個房屋嘅問題，第一時間咧，佢哋咧就指咧就係話邊個係要孭呢一樣嘢，就係講話啲學生要孭呢一樣嘢，咁樣真係好離譜咯。咁即係好似換句話講，咁樣就係第一時間佢哋亦都改咗呢一個學生嗰個工作嗰個 criteria， 就係話啲留學生咧，佢哋可以俾佢哋做多啲時間做多啲工，可以擺多啲時間出嚟做呢個工嘅。咁樣佢最主要點解會咁做法咧？就係因為我哋加拿大需要人手啦嘛，咁樣所以係我哋真係利用咗佢哋，攞咗啲人手啦。但係而家出咗問題啦，第一時間佢咧就指住係邊個話係呢個喺邊度嚟嘅呢個問題，佢咧就指咗話係啲學生嗰度咯。咁所以咁樣做法咧，真係我想唔到，即係政府會咁樣做法嘅，咁樣嚟利用啲留學生啦，同埋嚟怨啲留學生啊。
代表安省大約5萬名學生嘅大專院校學生聯盟主席阿斯亞夫時話，擔心聯邦政府官員嘅言論會令國際留學生被污名化。
We worry about it. We started off as soon as the comment was made, we were very worried about it. Keeping a pulse on things, we haven't quite noticed to a large degree that the general public took that comment and really ran with it. We feel that, the general public in Canada, as you know, we are the most educated country in the world. So I think the general public in Canada is quite informed, and they do analyze information that's given to them in a manner that really takes in some statistics and real numbers into account. So from what we've observed so far, we have not seen the general public really pointing and blaming and agreeing that it's international students, but we do see there has been a rise in people being concerned about how many international students are entering Canada at any given year.
聯邦房屋部長菲沙話，解決房屋問題其中一個可能就係將國際學生設上限。不過有唔少人士認為解決房屋有好多方法，點解只係針對國際學生？有熟悉移民法規嘅律師認為聯邦政府並唔係針對國際學生，但佢相信聯邦政府亦都冇辦法解決問題。
I don't think that the government is specifically targeting the international students to solve anything.I don't think the government can solve anything. I think the free market and the private sector can solve economic problems. The government cannot solve economic problems because the government in this particular instance is one of the causes of the problem. So they were the ones who increased immigration and also increased the number of temporary foreign workers and they increase the number of international students to a very, very high level. So they caused the problem, and now they need to find a solution. But the solution is very difficult. And The other part of your question is regarding temporary foreign workers. I think that needs to be looked at as well, because a lot of the temporary foreign workers are not living in Canada. Some foreign workers, a very good percentage, come for temporary work for very brief periods of times and leave. If we are talking about too much demand, we definitely need to address the question of the large number of permanent residents and non-permanent residents that the government is admitting to Canada, because that is definitely increasing demand. I don't think it's just the international students, but also other temporary workers and permanent residents.
國會議員關惠貞話：國際學生係本國嘅資源，當局更應該為佢哋改善住屋同埋其他資源問題。
政府可以即係佢講咧，就係話我哋有呢個需要，所以佢哋立嗰個移民嘅法咧，就係要嚟爭取多啲人嚟到加拿大。但係到呢個地步，就係而家有個房屋嘅困難，佢哋第一時間咧指佢咧就係話，就係啲海外嘅學生嚟到加拿大，所以令到我哋唔夠呢個房屋。另一步咧，我相信咧佢哋會行咧就會變咗係另外啲移民嘅人士嚟到加拿大，會就變咗加拿大有呢個房屋嘅問題咯。咁樣講到學生嘅需要，其實咧應該政府點樣做法咧？新民主黨咧亦都指咗出嚟，就係話第一時間我哋一定要同啲大學啦，同埋啲 college 啦一齊合作，而佢哋咧亦都有責任咧嚟收到呢一啲海外嘅學生咧係有呢個房屋嘅計劃嚟嘅。佢哋應該知道呢啲大學同埋呢啲 college 要知道海外嘅朋友嚟到加拿大讀書咧，佢哋一定要揾地方住噶啦嘛。咁樣所以嗰啲 student housing 咧，佢哋係咪有處理先？有冇起到增加呢啲 student housing 先？呢個第一個問題咯。咁樣所以另外咧，其實聯邦政府亦都要擺啲leadership 出嚟。咁樣咧，所以我哋新民主黨咧就提議出嚟，就係應該政府咁樣做法，就係應該撥款出嚟，就同埋省同埋啲 college 一齊合作。
大專院校學生聯盟主席阿斯亞夫士就認為，當局應該為學生增設專屬俾學生嘅房屋，而國際留學生除咗帶嚟經濟收入，亦都為本國添加咗唔同文化。
Yeah, so one of the ideas that we have been kind of passing around and polling people, and this was also discussed with a news organization here, was the idea that when you build student housing, they do not have to have the same level of luxury amenities that you build, within our condos that you sell on the market. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot more space that you can dedicate, there's a lot more housing that you can build and provide for students, whether it be on campus or slightly off campus. Another thing is international students coming and being forced to rent places that are so far outside of the radius of where they should be, and that's simply because of affordability, that they're spending so many hours on commuting and so much money on commuting because of the transit system, not covering all aspects of the city. So building more student housing would be a huge step. It would be such a more rational step than just saying capping international students. Of course, at some point, I briefly touched on, but talent. You're getting diverse and top-notch talent from around the world. International students just bring such diversity and such cultural richness to our country. And even something as silly as all the amazing food that we get to experience and learn, this is from people of different nations coming to this country and creating the whole fabric of our society. And international students just being such a powerful demographic because they're bringing so much talent with them.
好啦，今集嘅節目時間就差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 mag26@fairchildtv.com。如果觀眾想上網重溫翻今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站 39w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就可以睇得翻㗎啦。下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。